The core of the debate is, of course, that young people in this sort of industrial complex of breast removal and augmentation and everything else like that are being exploited, Peter. But if it's voluntary, is it mutilation? I mean, this is strong terminology.
Well, first let me say that I think that the obsession with the trans issue is out of all proportion. We have more than 7 million people on our hospital waiting lists. Some of them are dying because they can't get surgery, and we're obsessing over a cartoon on a coffee van. That's absurd priorities. But to answer your point directly, in this country, no one can have gender reassignment surgery before the age of 17 as a minimum in England.
Sorry, let
me. I didn't interrupt you.
That's false, Peter.
Let me finish. You didn't interrupt. In England, not before the age of 17, except if there are exceptional circumstances. But most people will wait 3 to 5 years to get their first appointment at a gender identity clinic. They'll have to have a series of further appointments, usually between 6 months and 1 year apart, and then they have to wait another 3 to 5 years to have the surgery. So it's very rare for anybody to have surgery before the mid to late 20s. And I know people in their early 30s who are still waiting, having applied 13 years ago.
OK, so you're saying the issue isn't as grossly out of proportion, or it's not happening as frequently as some might think, and some people are struggling at this. Kate, you had a point.
Yeah, it's actually false that no children are being operated on. The NHS has highlighted 51, it's not very many, but 51 girls aged 16 and 17 who've had mastectomies. And I know you think mutilation is a bit extreme, but, you know, that's healthy breast tissue. Those operations are really, really serious. And there's a reason why people like Peter call it top surgery.
Because I never mentioned top surgery.
I've heard you mention it before, because it sanitises it. It sounds quite cute and neat and easy and simple, but it isn't. It's a really serious surgery. Ask any woman that's had breast cancer what it's like to have a mastectomy. And to do that to yourself, to your healthy body, it's irreversible. I think it's the only silver lining is that people do have to wait a long time.
Is there an age at which you would deem it acceptable for somebody to make that decision themselves?
Our position is that for a very small minority of people who've had the proper support, proper counselling, had time to think, having a surgery, a cosmetic surgery, which enables them to resemble the opposite sex is a good option for them, and we hope that would help them to live a happy life. I don't think it's down to ages, except we would say never, ever, ever for children. It's absolutely wrong.
Let's listen to some testimony now. In fact, this is the story of Chloe Cole. She's a detransitioner, 27th of July 2023, her 19th birthday, testified to Congress with a final warning that medical treatments to change the gender of confused children is, quote, horrific. Let's take a listen.
We need to stop telling children that puberty is an option. Puberty is a rite of passage to adulthood, not a disease to be mitigated. My childhood was ruined, along with thousands of detransitioners that I know through our networks. Enough children have already been victimized by this barbaric pseudoscience. Please let me be your final warning.
Peter, interesting points already brought up by both of you this evening, in that separating this almost from the trans discussion, because you've got other things going on here. You've got people, as Kate said, who prefer to look like a tomboy. You've also got the issue of age and consent going on here. When you hear Chloe's testimony, how do you think that plays into the way the public are perceiving all this?
Well, I'm very sorry for Chloe that she went through a bad experience, but she did not go through that experience, as far as I'm aware, under pressure or in a short space of time. This resulted in many years of counselling and seeing specialists, and then she decided to go ahead with it. Now, I'm sorry that she regrets it. I'm very sorry for her, but there are only less than 1% of trans people who have gender reassignment surgery reject or have regrets about it. You know, 99% or almost 99% say it has dramatically improved the quality of their lives. They're happier, more fulfilled individuals, and their families and friends support that. So for most people, Chloe's experience is not typical. Gender reassignment surgery is life-enhancing, and it does mean a better quality of life for the people who go through it. So I would say live and let live.
Oh, okay, so statistically, Peter's saying exception to the rule.
I mean, that's simply false. We don't have any data for the huge influx of young people who've been having those kind of surgeries in the past few years. We have no long-term data, and that's just plucked out of the air. That 99%, you know, that's a very suspicious
There's
figure.
three major surveys.
No, hang on. So what we do have, we have no evidence that children, particularly girls, are any happier after their surgery. We have a lot of evidence, for example, that most children who are allowed to go through adolescence unmedicalised, 80 to 90% grow out of their feelings of dysphoria. So we would always argue that waiting is best. We see what's happened with this poor girl, Chloe. I think that in years to come, we're not going to remember the names of these girls because there's going to be a flood of them.
And do you think that they've been caught up in a zeitgeist, Peter? I mean, returning back to the original source of this conversation, Costa Coffee, can you believe it? But the way that the narrative has been pursued by corporates, by companies, but also by society, do you think people are getting caught up in it? Teenagers, young people influenced by social media?
There may be a tiny element of that, but it's not typical and not the norm. The vast majority of people, and I know dozens and dozens of trans women. I wish Kate would stop calling them girls. They're not girls, they're mature women, often in their 20s, 30s and 40s.
Chloe is 15.
Yes, and I just explained that I had sympathy with her, but she's in the United States, she's not here. Here in this country, people have to wait years, typically for gender reassignment surgery, from the very first application to have a gender identity clinic appointment. It will take 10 or more years for them to have any surgery, during which time they are counselled and given support so they've got opportunity to reconsider and to assess whether they're making the right decision. So the idea this is rushed or forced on people is simply false. And it's really painful for those many trans people who have to wait all these years to get the surgery that will affirm who they truly are and make them happy.
Can I just say that those 8,500 young people, mostly girls, who are crowdfunding for their surgery, aren't going through the NHS. I was busy on Google today and I had a look at clinics in London where you can go and get gender reassignment surgery and the prices for it. And they are absolutely booming. So the NHS is one thing and there is a long wait time, but people are funding for surgery themselves and they're going to clinics which are taking advantage of people who dislike their own bodies. It's an absolute scandal.
Well,
this will be the biggest scandal that's going to hit.
We agree, and no one should be rushed into this.
Yeah,
and that no one should make a swift decision.
Yeah.
It has to be thought through very carefully. People have to be counselled. They have to be questioned. And they have to be given other options. And then if they decide that's what they want, then we should respect their autonomy and their right to consent.
Yeah. I think that is an agreement we've reached. And look, I don't think we've finished talking about it. I think this will continue to be a hot topic of debate extraordinarily. But this evening, we've learnt, of course, that there's so many different levels to this and people involved. Kate, Peter, thank you very much for your views.